connections, insight, credibility, leadership. At the American Astronautical Society, we don't just talk about the future of space, we advance it.
Is Earth alone in the universe?
AAS brings together leading minds in aerospace, engineers, scientists, students, policymakers, and visionaries, united by one goal: advancing space for all. From high-impact conferences and student competitions to leadership and industry collaboration, we create opportunities for innovation, education, and connection. Space is not just a destination, it's a mission that shapes our world. And advancing space means advancing science, technology, communication, and global progress. Whether you're engineering missions or imagining what's next, there's a place for you at AAS. Together, we advance space.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. So great to have you all here. My name is Jim Way. I'm the Executive Director of the American Astronautical Society, and we are pleased to welcome you to our Lifetime Achievement Award presentation ceremony. Before we get into opening comments, I wanted to make a few comments of appreciation. So thank you very, very much to Space Center Houston for hosting us, for being such gracious hosts. We really appreciate it, and all the team here. Thank you very much to the team at NASA Johnson Space Center for all your collaborations on this event tonight. Thank you to Jan Weed, Gene Kranz's incredibly able assistant. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to tonight's supporters, our primary supporter, Northrop Grumman, as well as our additional supporters, the Aerospace Corporation and Barrios Technology. So thank you to all of you. So now, without further ado, we'll get right into our opening comments speakers and then get on to the main presentation. So with that, I'd like to welcome to the stage William Harris, President and CEO of Space Center Houston.
Thank you so much, Jim. I am absolutely delighted to welcome all of you here to Space Center Houston for this extraordinary event recognizing the remarkable Gene Kranz, who is both a colleague and a friend. The mission of Space Center Houston is to reveal how science and humanity powers space exploration, and our purpose is to bring people and space closer together. And so this is a very appropriate location for us to be holding this event and this celebration and recognition. Our focus here is to interpret human space exploration past, present, and future. And we're so fortunate to be the official visitor center of NASA Johnson Space Center and welcome more than 1.3 million guests a year to learn about the remarkable achievements of NASA, but specifically the incredible work of the team at NASA Johnson Space Center. I have to share a little story. When I first arrived here several years ago at Space Center Houston, we were beginning to prepare for the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 lunar launch. And the first people that I got to meet when I got here were Gene Kranz and Ed Fendel. And they came and said, we got to do something about restoring the historic Mission Operations Control Room. And so we were concerned. It had been a big effort to try to restore it in years past. But Gene proved firsthand his adage that he's renowned for, which is tough and competent. It was, we are going to get this done. And without his focus, energy, momentum, and personal grit, this project would not have happened, and also with Ed. So I want to first off thank both Ed and Gene for your incredible work in helping restore Mission Operations Control Room. I want to say too, these two gentlemen are really fun. So if you ever have the privilege of hanging out with them, they made it a joy working on this project. We went through a lot of tough times, but it's just one example of the many ways that Gene has given back and continues to give back and is dedicated to advancing not only space exploration, but STEM learning. And we're honored here to hold here at Space Center Houston a scholarship in his name, a Gene Kranz Scholarship. And so I'm just so thrilled that I have an opportunity to greet all of you and be part of this evening to recognize his incredible achievements. Now it's my honor to introduce the Principal Director at the Aerospace Corporation and President of the AAS Board of Directors, Ron Burke. Please join me in welcoming Ron.
All right, thank you, William, and good evening, all. It is absolutely wonderful to celebrate this evening and recognize such a distinguished guest and recipient of the 7th of the AAS Lifetime Achievement Awards. And let me share a bit of a reflection, a bit of a short story about how the American Astronautical Society came to be. In early 1952, there was a group in New York area that was promoting a meeting of the Staten Island Interplanetary Society, where they were, and this is a quote, seeking to address problems of rocket propulsion, navigation, and physiology and planet hopping that would be discussed. So they were a bit ahead of their time. Small group met a few times, but they really had a little trouble in establishing a sufficient momentum and interest. When the attendance fell off a bit, the remaining members doubled their resolve to make sure that this society came into being. And so over the next few years, they worked very hard to establish the society, and on January of 1954, just a mere 71 years ago, they established the society. And you know, some might say, as we can expect the quote here, that failure was not an option. As Gene might have advised them, they needed to lay out their options and make sure that failure wasn't one of them. And they've done that. And we are fortunate to be here today as a result. So these 37 individuals that got the society underway were serious about championing proposals for spaceflight. And the preamble of the constitution of the new organization was to publicly disseminate and support as many of the credible proposals for the concepts of space as possible. And since then, AAS has not wavered in our resolve to deliver on that mission over these many years. So on or about every 10 years, every 10th anniversary of the society, we present an AAS Lifetime Achievement Award to the individual who has made sustained personal contributions to the field of astronautics. If you do the math, you appreciate that there's only 6. I mentioned at the beginning, this is the 7th. And prior recipients include Ed Stone, Pete Aldridge, Norm Augustine, George Lowe, William Pickering, and back in 1964, Werner von Braun. Tonight we are tremendously honored and excited to bestow this award once again to an individual of incredible stature with a history of unmatched contributions to spaceflight. So on behalf of the American Astronautical Society, thank you to William Harris and the entire team here at Space Center Houston for hosting the event, just absolutely fantastic. Thank you to our supporting companies, as Jim has mentioned, and thank you so much to NASA Johnson Space Center for all of the coordination that has brought us here together. Now, I'm honored to turn things over to Steve Kroner, to Acting Center Director for NASA Johnson Space Center, home of America's Astronaut Corps, Mission Control Center, the International Space Station, Orion, and Gateway programs, and the more than 11,000 employees that you have here serving the space enterprise. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's great to see so many familiar faces here tonight. As Ron mentioned, my name's Steve Kerner, Acting Director, Johnson Space Center, if we haven't had a chance to meet. Thanks to Ron and William for their opening comments. Set the bar high. Tonight, Gene, this is about celebrating you and the work you've done. The work you've done, ensuring mission success, propelling the future of human space flight. Impressive when I pause and think about it. From Gene's time working in Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, Skylab, and Shuttle, he not only led with confidence, he led with excellence, and he instilled that in his team. Just today, I had the privilege of meeting Gene over in the Apollo Mocher, and I just had to smile when I heard him talking about he and his flight controllers. Me and my flight controllers. And just that ownership of that endeavor, impressive to see your command leadership of that. Gene, thank you. After the Apollo 1 fire, Gene gave a speech that would forever change our culture at JSC and specifically in operations. It was referenced earlier, toughness and competence, but I looked up the words that were used that day. Let me read them to you, because I think we maybe gloss over what was behind the tough and confident that Gene mentioned. Tough means we are forever accountable for what we do or what we fail to do. We will never again compromise our responsibilities. Competent means we will never take anything for granted. We will never be found short in our knowledge or in our skill. That caused me to pause. I will never be found short in my knowledge or skill. And so ultimate preparation, that mindset, we can thank Gene for how that is infiltrated our teams even to today. My first interaction with Gene, I was brand new to the organization, early 90s. It was a shuttle mission. I was working in systems division for Jack Knight. Jack, good to see you up there. I think I was OJTing. It was relatively new in my career here. I could barely find my way around the MCC. In fact, today I can barely find my way around the MCC. But I don't know if they were new or if they were new to me, but they had these card readers to get into the building from the lobby. And one particular night, right at dawn or dusk, I don't remember the shift I was on, the shuttle was going to be going overhead and we could go outside and see it. And so we got permission. I don't remember who the on-console flight director was, but several of us ran outside to watch the shuttle go overhead. And so there was a big contingent out in the parking lot. After it passed, we'd go back in, and long lines to get in the door into the control center. And as I get up there and I'm sweeping my badge, it's not working. It's not working. It's not working. And I can hear the introductory procedures I got when I got there. Don't tailgate. It's better work. Don't follow anybody in. Your badge gets you in. And I'm standing there, kind of sweat beads on my head, and I know the line's behind me, and I turn around, and who's standing behind me but this man right there? And he walks up, and he takes his badge and swipes it, and he says, "Come with me, young man." And in we walk, and I'm thinking my first interaction with Gene Kranz, and I couldn't even get in the building appropriately. So he's an inspiration to the team, but also things like that on how he supported his team members. I could invite half of his team members up here, and they would tell similar stories about how he impacted them personally. Today, to this day, when we walk through mission control, his legacy still stands, and it's apparent that it's mission excellence. Gene didn't just help put humans on the moon, he helped build a mindset to make that possible. So as NASA forges ahead with a desire to return humans to the moon and onto Mars, it's Gene's forging that'll get us there. And so, Gene, thank you for all you've done for our agency, for human spaceflight, for our nation, and for me personally. So I don't know of anybody more deserving of this award, and thanks to AAS to recognizing Mr. Kranz here tonight. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve, Ron, William, appreciate it. So before we begin the main ceremony, we do have a special late-breaking presentation that we'd like to do. So I'm not sure where she is, but I'd like to please welcome to the stage, there she is, Cindy Butcher. She's District Director for Texas State Representative Dr. Greg Bonin, who is Chairman of House Appropriations. I will turn it over to you all.
Thank you all so much for having us here this evening. I'm also with Mrs. Kim Bonin, State Representative Dr. Greg Bonin's wife. It is an honor and a privilege that I can't express strongly enough to get to be here on behalf of State Representative Dr. Greg Bonin, and I can assure you he truly wishes he was here. He would be totally fangirling right now. So we have in honor of Mr. Kranz a Texas State resolution from the House of Representatives in your honor, and I'm going to read just in part. Whereas legendary flight director Gene Kranz is being presented with the American Astronautical Society Lifetime Achievement Award on May 15, 2025 at Space Center Houston, and whereas one of the most influential figures in the history of U.S. manned space exploration, Gene Kranz played a critical role in building the success of the nation's space program, and he is indeed deserving of this prestigious honor. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Gene Kranz is congratulated on his receipt of the American Astronautical Society Lifetime Achievement Award, and that he be extended sincere appreciation for his many contributions. Sincerely, State Representative Dr. Greg Bonin.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Bonin, Dr. Greg Bonin's wife. And we also have one other thing that we're presenting to Mr. Kranz tonight, and that is a flag that was flown over the Texas Capitol in honor of Gene Kranz and all that he has done for us and for space.
We're almost ready for you. Just one more quick thing, right? Yeah, right. And so now, with special thanks to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, please enjoy the following video to learn a little bit more about Gene Kranz, heard from the man himself.
I'm Gene Kranz. I was the division chief for flight control during the Gemini and the Apollo programs. I was also a flight director for a total of 17 missions. I was born in Toledo, Ohio in 1933. During high school, I got interested in aviation and space. My high school term paper in 1950 was the design and possibilities of an interplanetary rocket. My problem was I took the crew to the moon, but I didn't have a way to get them back. Following that, I went in and served in the Air Force. I looked for other opportunities, and I saw the Space Task Group was forming, and I was one of the early members of the Space Task Group. The flight director selected because of his ability to form and lead a team. He has to inspire that team. He has to be able to provide the directions necessary for assuring crew safety and mission success. And during the course of the mission, he has to maintain the ability to communicate to his people that no matter what happens, we will accomplish our mission, achieve the objective, and we will bring our crew home. As division chief, I had to make a trade-off between flying missions and leading the divisions. I flew all odd-numbered missions. There was Apollo 1, then 5, 7, 9, 11, and Apollo 13.
Saturn V building up to 7.6 million pounds of thrust, and it has cleared the tower.
Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here. This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
One of the major things that resulted after Apollo 13, we were given more of the computer resources to help the controllers in their decision process. Personally, it just proved that Mission Control and the teams we built had the right stuff. I say it is it, which is the team chemistry to go forward, accept the challenge, accomplish a mission, and come back home and say, we did it once more. We took an American to the moon. We're on the high ground. We're capable of doing it. All you got to do is give us a call and send us on our way.
An extremely loud applause as Apollo 13 on main chutes comes through loud and clear on the television display here.
Flight down at this time.
There are visible smiles on the faces of the flight controllers and astronauts in this room.
Failure is not an option basically represents the challenge we face in mission control and our ability to face up to great difficulties, select answers, and find a path to accomplish our mission, bring our crew back home. All of my memorable moments were of my team. As the crew splashed down, the mission was over. I get sort of misty, sort of weepy. Every flight director has a perspective on what mission control is. I consider it a leadership laboratory. This is where we took the young pup controllers and taught them to stand up, be accountable for decisions, and no matter what pressure they had, to help each other out, to act always as a team. And as a team, we would find answers.
The American Astronautical Society's Lifetime Achievement Award, once again, is presented only once a decade to an individual who has made sustained personal contributions to the field of astronautics. Therefore, it is my distinct honor and privilege to present the AAS Lifetime Achievement Award to Gene Kranz for your exemplary leadership and must-never-fail style that ensured historic mission successes, empowered human space exploration, saved lives, and inspired individuals around the world. Congratulations.
Okay. You know, I see enough of the old NASA people here to basically truth check everything I'll be saying this evening. So when we finish, you can go out in the lobby and say, did it really happen? Sandra Tetley was one that was basically very instrumental in making the restoration of mission control happen. Basically, we got a call one day that said the mission control has been declared an endangered facility. And this sort of got me because I'd been speaking and giving tours out there, but I didn't realize what tough shape it was in. I was busy that day, so I asked Ed Fendell here to carry the ball for me. And he is a great wingman, so now I'll start my talk. First of all, I would like to thank the American Astronautical Society for this evening's Lifetime Achievement. And I also want to give my thanks to the Space Center Houston and Johnson Space Center for hosting this evening's event. You know, a Lifetime Award represents a span of many years and poses many challenges. Where do I start talking? What do I talk about? What do I say? How long do I talk? And how do I avoid putting the audience to sleep? At the entrance to the Johnson Space Center is a group of young oak trees. It's called the Astronaut Memorial Grove. A tree is planted in memory of the deceased who ventured into space. And as a former flight director, occasionally driving through the gate, I'll just turn in there for a reunion with one of my crews of the past. Last month, a tree was dedicated for Dick Truly. Dick and Bob Crippen were both Capcoms during Skylab, and Cripp provided the words describing Dick's career and his impact on the space program. During Truly's tree dedication, I was standing next to Tom Stafford's tree. And that afternoon, looking at Tom's headstone, I knew that for many of us, our time was at end. I've been blessed with a good life, an incredible wife of 69 years, 6 grandchildren, 6 great children, and many grandchildren. At 92 years, I've learned that life resembles the trees in this grove. We're in a constant state of growth, with many seasons and phases of weather, some good, some very challenging. Half of my life was spent in aviation or NASA mission operations. And some lessons were mere minutes, some unexpected, and others, like leadership, spanned my life. Learning came from many sources. My mother ran a military boarding house for the American Legion during World War II. My sisters and I lived in that boarding house. And after the war, I worked 2 jobs during high school to support my mother. In my office, I have pictures of 3 Catholic nuns, Sister Caroline, Sister Mark, and Sister Patricia from Central Catholic. They structured my high school class so I could arrive late in the morning and leave early in the afternoon. Central Catholic was a vocational high school, and I studied drafting for 4 years. And at the end of the 4th year, I was doing assembly drawings for the Fairbanks Morse Pump Company, and expected to work there after my graduation. The nuns, however, believed I had engineering abilities, and they coached me for the Naval Academy entrance exam. I passed the exam, received a congressional appointment, but I failed the physical. My night work was brownies and chocolate milk, which is hardly the diet of champions. As a young man, I had already faced many hardships, and having lost the appointment, I believed my options for college were gone. But the nuns found an Ohio Elk Scholarship loan for deceased veterans of World War I that provided $500 a year for college. And this put me back in the path for my future. I hitchhiked daily to high school, and weekends to Cleveland or Detroit for the air shows. To get to Parks College, however, was a different problem. I'd ride with long-haul truck drivers, or often hitch a ride on a freight training. My uncle taught me how to capture the train, the caboose, get to know the crew that was in the caboose, and ride with them up to Chicago and then down to St. Louis and Highway 66. Truck drivers always talk to stay awake. So I learned of hardships, the Depression, broken families, and a dust bowl that choked animals and humans alike. Parks College operated in the trimester system, so I graduated in 3 years. The student population at Parks was 150 military and 350 civilians. And our electives were hands-on shop courses. We learned to weld, work with sheet metal, the skills needed to be an airplane. I received an aeronautical engineering degree and an Air Force ROTC commission. And waiting for pilot training, class 56M, I worked a half year in flight test data reduction at McDonnell Aircraft. Harry Kell was very instrumental in my life from then on. He was a B-17 pilot with 37 combat missions. He was a Renaissance man, and Renaissance man is somebody who did everything well. He taught me to treat every flight as a first flight. I flew the Sabre jet in Korea in the 69th Fighter Bomber Squadron, 5 minutes flying time from the north. I became a flight leader and trained my team to fly, fight, and win. Our work was deadly. 5 in the 58th group died in crashes or never returned from a flight. The 69th lost 1 pilot who lived in my hooch. In February, I was assigned to the Army Camp Casey as a forward air controller with the 7th Infantry Division. And there I saw close air support from both sides. After Korea, I worked at Holloman Air Force Base as a flight test engineer for 30 months on a B-52. developing decoy missiles for the B-52, and classified technologies to defeat Soviet air defenses. This was a great learning time. My team of 7 mechanics, we never scrubbed a flight, and occasionally we got 2 test flights in one day. I knew I had a great team when my mechanics invited me to join their Friday midnight bowling team. For many of us here, our time began in the mid-50s in the area of supersonic flight and continued to the mid-80s. We were children of the Depression and grew up in a world war. Our parents' schooling, if they had any, came from work in the homes, offices, and factories. Those in the Midwest came from farms or grew up in small colleges, and if lucky, they were the first in the family to go to college. Our work ethic and values were shaped by our parents. Teachers provided knowledge, and our friends taught us the give and take in a time before television. In our time, the common thread in our background was a sense of adventure that came from reading pulp fiction, watching the Saturday afternoon reels, and listening to Jack Armstrong, the All-American Boy. Some of our generation saw service at the end of World War, but most learned of it from the newspapers and radio reports that described the great battles of land, air, and sea. We were riveted by these bulletins. Many of us kept track of Allied battles and advances by plotting updates on maps we pinned in the bedroom war. We helped our parents grow victory gardens and collected paper, scrap, iron, and other materials essential to the war effort. We played sandlot sports where we learned leadership and teamwork, and win or lose, we always played by the rules. And when we looked at the skies over our nation, we saw the fighters and bombers produced in our factories and thought of the brave men like Harry Carroll and many others. With our face to the sky, our dreams of flight began, along with a deep love of country. Without being aware, duty, honor, and country entered our lives. And we stood at attention, hands over our hearts as the flag passed. When we passed a house with a gold star banner in the window, we knew the family had lost a son or daughter. And we helped by cutting their grass, running their errands, and saying a prayer. Some of us joined Scouts, some excelled at sports, others at academic. But when we reached 17, we registered for the draft. The GI Bill provided the path to an education for the warriors, while others, assisted by their parents, obtained their education by working their way through college. The Cold War called many of us to serve in distant places, and we felt honored to be the flag bearer of our nation. In those distant places, we received practical experience in leadership, trust, sacrifice, and brotherhood, and we returned wiser for the experience. Our military service demanded a unique personal and profound courage, as well as reckless defiance of the odds, combined with acceptability of accountability for events. Through the decade of the 50s, we charted our individual path of adventure, risk, and learning. Many became aviators, and midway through the decade, the Century series of fighter aircraft were flying supersonic. Our role models were Gabby Gabreski, Boots Blissett, and James Jabara. Korean aces leading the fighter groups. For others, their models were Chuck Yeager, Scott Crossfield, and Neil Armstrong. Fighter aces and test pilots drove our imagination even higher, and we each adjusted our course to fly to become the first and the fastest. Our nation was in motion. Breakthroughs in aeronautics and all areas of science had become routine. Risk was the key ingredient that allowed rapid advances in aviation and space technology. In October 1967, Russia's Sputnik drove the convergence of our individual destinies. Looking skyward, we saw space as our new arena, and higher and faster took on a new meaning for us. In July 1958, in response to the Soviet challenge, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration was born. 4 months later, the Space Task Group was formed under the capable leadership of Dr. Robert Gilruth, a pioneer of aeronautical research. By November, Gilruth had 37 engineers and 8 secretaries who served as the nucleus for the rapidly expanding Project Mercury team. When the Canadian government canceled the Aero program, members of the Aero Flight Test and Engineering team applied to the Space Task Group and in short order were brought on board. The Space Task Group was rich in flight test leadership. Walt Williams, the former director of the NACA High-Speed Test Station, led Project Mercury. Chris Kraft and Merritt Preston had responsibility for launch and flight operations. Brilliant young engineers, Max Faget and Jim Chamberlain, led the spacecraft design effort, and Deke Slayton corralled the 7 astronauts. Under their mentorship, a new generation of spaceflight leaders was born. Chemistry in any organization is a force amplifier. The combination of the engineers from Langley with hands-on design experience, the flight test experience of the Aero team, and the passion of the young engineers recruited from America's colleges created a powerhouse capable of winning the space race. The Mercury 7 astronauts were instant heroes when their names were announced on TV. Their selection training in every aspect of their personal life made headlines in newspapers and across the nation and around the globe. While still in its infancy, the television coverage of the network space reporters, Joel Bergman, Roy Neal, Walter Cronkite, opened every evening's TV newscast, treating the Mercury crewmen like rock stars. Within the program, however, after several rocket failures, the U.S. Congress and the media begged the question, when is America going to catch up with the Russians? Yuri Gagarin's orbital flight in April 1961 was quickly countered by Alan Shepard's suborbital launch a month later. Then May 25, 1961, the developing U.S. space program was catapulted to the forefront of national priorities, with President John F. Kennedy's challenge to send an American to the moon and return him safely. He said, we choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to this moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they're easy, but because they are hard. Kennedy's words fired our efforts. The Space Task Group was challenged not to match the Russians, but to beat them to the moon before the end of the decade. At that time, we had yet to orbit a Mercury spacecraft. Kennedy's challenge galvanized the young space team, and the lunar goal became a fire that consumed thousands and tens of thousands as it spread across the nation. Our challenge was one of leadership, team building, invention, and perseverance in developing the space systems and the skills to rendezvous, dock, and go extravehicular. Risk is the price of progress and discovery. It is a price explorers and their guides pay to chart new paths, and what we knew was now our duty. We were fortunate in time and because Americans expected our best effort. They expected us to succeed in the lunar goal and knew that in our high-risk occupation, failures and losses would occur. Project Mercury was our boot camp. Luck and leadership carried the day on missions like Scotty Carpenter's, where we were just about running out of fuel, and the controller teams at Hawaii and California got them back to Earth. We learned that man could live in performance space, but we learned much more. We learned leadership, leaders with integrity who were teachers, team builders, great listeners, and above all, masters at managing risk. Our leaders, Miller, Lowe, and Kraft, covered our backs when they turned us loose. They did the blocking so that if we had trouble, the team could continue the drive and focus on the goal. Project Gemini required massive infusions of new skills, new talent, knowledge about computers, fuel cells, and the mathematics of rendezvous and docking. We brought in the young people working in the college laboratories and merged them with the experienced Mercury team. And with the new generation, we began working on the leading edge of knowledge, experience, and technology. New classes of astronauts now became our teammates in the laboratories, test stands, and mission control. Simulations tested our procedures and mission goals, and in debriefings, we owned up to mistakes. I wore a white vest in Gemini 4 to brand my team for the first time. And with each Gemini mission, our confidence, technology of space, and our skills as a team grew. We worked with two-man space crews, expanded the flight direction, mastered the skills needed for our coming lunar journey. When Gemini 8 ran out of orbital fuel, we got Armstrong and Scott down to emergency landing in the West Pacific. On Gemini 12, with neutral buoyancy training, we finally got the last remaining objective, an EVA capability. In full view of the world, we assumed leadership in the arena of manned spaceflight, and we were ready to go to the moon. Outside our protective environment, the world was changing. 3 American leaders in their prime were cut down by bullets. Vietnam dominated the headlines, and America's campuses fostered flower children. The civil rights and environmental movements marched within our nation. Chance was in the air. And the military detailees that had been serving with us in mission control were called to serve in Vietnam. Then on January 27, 1967, as a team, we came face to face with death. We knew of risk, had survived close calls, but the deaths of Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffrey and a launch pad fire changed us forever. I had seen death in Korea and now in the launch pad. In mission controls, the words of the dictum, tough and competent, entered our vocabulary, and it became the price for admission to our ranks. The realism for the risks of our work emerged, and as a stronger, more mature team, we began the final march to the moon. Learned by doing was the byword. Ruthless honesty was a standard, and absolute professionalism was the measure of every individual on our team. Approaching the end of the decade, each Apollo mission was a first. Apollo 7 was the first manned mission to test the command and service module. But we were behind in the lunar module. On April 8th, 1968, Kraft called a staff meeting that triggered the start of a bold and risky venture to bypass a high Earth orbital mission and instead go to the moon. 3 months later, I was called to Kraft's office, advised I was now the division chief for flight control, and told that George Lowe wants to fly a mission to the moon this year. I was directed to provide the list of people to build the mission plan in 3 days. April 8 went to the moon, and on Christmas Eve, 1968, we listened to Borman, Lovell, and Anders read from the book of Genesis. 3 missions later, on July 20th, 1969, America put it all on the line. And a group of 27-year-old mission controllers battled to reach the lunar surface for the first time. The landing was close, very close, but when we landed, they walked on the surface and we brought the crew home. We fulfilled the pledge made to our dead President, John F. Kennedy, and to astronauts Grissom, White, and Chaffee. Other events now took the headlines. Our nation was preoccupied with the war in Vietnam, Earth Day, Civil War in Africa, and the Cultural Revolution in China. The lunar missions continued, challenging the controller teams. Apollo 12 was hit by 2 lightning strikes shortly after liftoff. Apollo 13 was 200,000 miles from Earth, 45,000 miles from the moon, when a service module cryogenic tank exploded. The crew of Apollo 14 was preparing for the lunar descent when an abort light on a controller's panel turned red, and the crew was told to hit the abort switch with their flashlight. When the light went out, the landing attempt was no go, and 2 hours later, MIT Draper Labs and Mission Control developed a software patch to bypass the abort switch and attempt the landing in the moon. During Apollo 17, space artist Robert McCall often sat on the strap of my console, sketching the controllers in action. I asked him to design an insignia for mission control, and I gave him the motto, Res Gesta per Excellentiam, achievement through excellence. McCall's insignia exists today with some slight modern updates. I need sticky fingers here. With frustration and sadness, December 14th, 1972, at mission time 187 hours and 54 minutes, I gave the mission control go for the Challenger liftoff from the Taurus Mountains, south of Littrow Crater. The great crusade of our time had been fulfilled. It was now time to exploit the near space environment. We converted the remaining Apollo flight systems to build a space station we called Skylab. Teams and crews who had looked to the moon, turned their efforts to science and the effects of long-duration spaceflight on missions. Skylab did not emerge from its birth easily. A structural failure during launch damaged the workshop electrical and thermal systems. And Mission Control flew the Skylab by ground command for 10 days, while a brilliant JSC engineer, Jack Kinsler, devised an umbrella-like device to shield the damaged structure. Conrad and Kerwin then destroyed the umbrella device, then executed a very risky EVA to deploy the remaining workshop array. Ingenuity and perseverance saved the program. Skylab became the world's most productive space station, and for years, 3 crews studied the sun, earth, and the human aspects of space. Following Skylab, I was assigned as Deputy Director of Mission Operations. Kenny Klankenek, the former Mercury program manager, was the director. And it was a great marriage because Kenny was 100% engineer and taught me about program manager while I taught him about operations. In January 1976, George Abbey replaced Klankenek as director, and he focused on the astronaut corps and the aircraft operations. I focused on the shuttle space system recruiting and development of the shuttle teams. No longer commanding the powerful budgets of the 60s, NASA's manned efforts were now tied to low Earth orbit. The space shuttle, a truly magnificent flying machine, was the last hurrah for many of the members of our generation. Part aircraft, part spacecraft returning to Earth, it is a 120-ton glider flying to a dead stick landing on a runway at Cape Kennedy. Jerry Griffin replaced Kraft as center director and began a major contract consolidation effort. I was assigned to manage all of space operations, facilities, training, software, including shuttle software. I had a total of about 5,600 people. A boot camp prepared the new generation of flight controller recruits for work in mission control. No longer an all-male enterprise, women with the right stuff now filled demanding positions and tested the crews and controllers' mettle as simulation supervisors. I use a phrase now from astronaut Chris Hadfield that opened my recent book. Leadership is about laying the groundwork for others' success, then standing back and letting them shine. That day came for me April 12, 1981. I was now seated behind the console behind Flight Director Neil Hutchinson. I was now an observer, technically obsolete, ready to answer the Flight Director's calls for opinions, if requested. But it was time to do the job Kraft had done for me as blocking back for the operations team. The start of the flight phase of the shuttle was very turbulent. Leadership in Washington changed 3 times. And the goals of a high flight rate and low-cost budget drove the shuttle manifest and led to contractor consolidations. Kraft retired in August 1982 at the completion of the OFT phase. After discussing his concerns for the shuttle program at the Cape, his final words to me were, "Stay strong in my position." And the words struck me as strange, but in the coming years, I would see them as prophetic. The 25th shuttle mission lifted off on January 28, 1986. Shortly after the gopher startup, the Challenger exploded. That day, it seemed like we watched the video pictures of the explosion Challenger for an eternity. While the flags were being lowered for the shuttle generation of controllers, there is no longer singing wheel to let alcohol dim the pain. Despite our resolve to be tough and competent, we had lost another crew. On launch day, I had an organization of 5,600 people changing jobs. The NASA administrator was vacant, as was the JSC center director. Aaron Cohen described this period as a time worse than chaos. When we began to execute the contingency checklist, I returned to my office and wrote the notes for the most important staff meeting of my life. 4 hours later, I established a war room for actions to support the investigation team, assigned personnel, address costs, work a schedule, and I established a contractor during the downtime. Dick Truly was assigned as Associate Administrator. The Presidential Commission identified the solid rocket field joint as the failure mechanism and broadly addressed the issues in the NASA organization and culture. The Discovery returned to flight on September 29, 1988, with a flight rate of 8 to 10 for the 3 remaining shuttles. In 1989, Truly received the Collier Trophy and singled out Arnie Aldrich and Dick Kors for their efforts to return the shuttle to flight status. The Space Station program, established by President Reagan in his 1984 Union address, was redesignated as Freedom in July when President George Bush announced a space exploration initiative and named Truly as the NASA administrator. The shuttle was running smoothly, but the Freedom Station was in financial trouble, competing with the funding for a replacement orbiter. Shortly after Truly's appointment as administrator, a call for outside groups to address schedules and capabilities triggered a conflict between Truly and the Quail-led Space Council. Truly's push to fund a 4th orbiter and his drive to select a deputy were in conflict with the White House establishing a new direction in space. Truly was asked to retire and left NASA in 1982. After Truly's retirement, Dan Golden was selected as a change agent to address the NASA culture issue. Golden's frequent description of the NASA team as pale, male, and stale did nothing to inspire his workforce. Golden established his headquarters staff with selected astronauts and civil servant detailees willing to do his bidding to establish a new direction in space. In essence, at this time, Freedom now had 2 program offices, 2 astronaut teams, and 2 operations teams, working to different program baselines and in constant conflict. The differences became apparent during a hearing when Kors and I testified on forecast costs for the Freedom's operation phase, and we were called liars by Dan Golden. A formal written apology from Golden was demanded by Senator Mikulski. This all came to a head on December 20th, 1992, when Mikulski, a solid but very angry supporter of the Freedom program, sent her staffers to my office to provide policy guidance. She said, "Program Manager Kors is one of the few NASA leaders we trust. Congress has no sympathy for the current NASA management problems and the station program disarray. Few of the NASA bosses are sticking their necks out in challenging Golden's policies. The congressionally approved costs and schedules are not the baseline at NASA headquarters. In December, we completed the 8th shuttle mission and the return to flight, and concluded support for DoD flights and looked forward to 7 missions in 1993, including a TDRS deploy and the Hubble repair. After reading Mikulski's notes, I moved to full-time support of Freedom on January 1st, 1993, and assigned my deputy, John O'Neill, as Director of Shuttle Operations, so I could address the Freedom Program challenges. There were now 2 Freedom programs, one Congress approved and the second developed by NASA headquarters in response to the White House direction to incorporate Russia as a partner. Without strong and experienced leadership at headquarters, there is limited continuity across the NASA programs and centers. And actually, there were several Freedom programs and studies working in parallel. With Truly's retirement, Space News and Communications from former Deputy Hans Mark became our only source for program information. NASA leadership was exhausted by the chaos. Aaron Cohen retired to take a position at Texas A&M, leaving Paul Weitz as JSC Deputy Director. On August 27, 1993, Astronaut Chief Dave Leesma and I wrote a memo to the NASA Deputy Director, Marine General Jeremiah Person, on our assessment of the headquarters' proposed Freedom design changes. Our memo contained recommendations related to assembly, EVA, power. Unfortunately, the letter was leaked and published in Space News with the headquarters. Officials feel Russian deal premature. Headquarters directed Leesma and I to cease writing memos. 2 weeks later, I sent a second signed memo on Freedom operations to Deputy Administrator General Pearson. This time he flew down to JSC to personally say, we said no more memos. I joined Milt Heflin for my last time at the Mod Council on STS-61 to repair the Hubble Space Telescope. When I walked out of the control room that day, it was time to close my NASA working career and return to aviation. In our time, we knew the triumph of high achievement. And when we failed, at least we failed while daring greatly, so that our place will never be with those cold and timid souls, neither know victory or defeat. I remain steadfast in my belief for NASA. I speak to every intern co-op program that calls and asks for it. I believe in NASA and the NASA mission. Technology developed in the coming years. I'm sort of messed up in timing here. In the coming years, your time, the current NASA, will become one of perseverance to address and sustain the complex challenges of your current programs. And I wish you fair skies and tailwinds on your NASA journey. Thank you. Thank you.
So much.
I got sort of dry there. It's hard to talk when your tongue's about this thick.
Thank you so much. And I do want to say, well, thank you again, Gene. Thank you so much, and congratulations. I do want to recognize 2 other very important people in the room, 2 icons of human spaceflight. From Apollo 13, we have astronaut Fred Hayes, and from, yes, thank you. And from Apollo 17, we have Harrison Jack Schmitt. So, thank you for being here. And finally, we do have one more message from some very special folks that couldn't be here in the room tonight, but wanted to say a few words.
Good evening, everyone, and greetings from the Expedition 73 crew aboard the International Space Station. I'm NASA astronaut Ann McLean with my crewmates Johnny Kim, Nicole Ayers, and Takuya Onishi.
We are honored to congratulate Gene Kranz on your selection as the American Astronautical Society's Lifetime Achievement Award honoree. Coming to you from the International Space Station, we couldn't agree more with this recognition.
Your leadership in the Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and Shuttle programs was instrumental in the execution of safe and productive missions for decades, and will continue to ensure our continued exploration in low Earth orbit, on the Moon, and eventually on Mars and beyond.
Your work is the foundation for everything we have done and will do as we continue to expand our endeavors in human spaceflight.
So again, congratulations on this well-deserved recognition. We would not be here now without the discipline and competence you instilled in our mission control teams. So have a great evening, everyone, and congratulations again, White Flight. Ad Astra.
So thank you all again so much for being here tonight. Thank you to our supporting companies, Northrop Grumman especially, as well as the Aerospace Corporation and Barrios Technology. Thanks again to our hosts here at Space Center Houston and to everyone at NASA Johnson for all your collaboration. So please be, we will have the reception out in the atrium right after this. VIPs, please make your way over to the elevator by the gift shop. And for everybody going to the reception in the atrium, Mr. Kranz will step away for a little bit to the VIP meet and greet, and then we'll be back down in about half an hour. So we will see you all down here at the reception. So thank you very, very much again for coming, and another round of applause for Gene Kranz. Thank you.